one of the things we've all met is the accusation that we are strident or arrogant or vitriolic or shrill. What do we think about that?
Yeah, well, I'm amused by it because I went out of my way in my book to address reasonable religious people, and I flew the draft with groups of students who were deeply religious. And indeed, the first draft incurred some real anguish, and so I made adjustments and made adjustments, and it didn't do any good in the end because I still got hammered for being rude and aggressive. And I came to realize that it's a no-win situation. It's a mug's game. The religions have contrived to make it impossible to disagree with them critically without being rude.
Without being rude.
You know, they sort of play the hurt feelings card at every opportunity, and you're faced with the choice of, well, am I going to be rude, or am I going to articulate this criticism? I mean, am I going to articulate it, or am I just going to button my lip?
Right. Well, that's what it is to trespass a taboo. I think we're all encountering the fact that religion is held off the table of rational criticism in some kind of formal way, even by, we're discovering, our fellow secularists and our fellow atheists. You know, just leave people to their own superstition, even if it's abject and causing harm. I don't look too closely at it.
Now that was, of course, the point of the title of my book, is there is this spell and we got to break it.
But if the charge of offensiveness in general is to be allowed in public discourse, then without self-pity, I think we should say that we too can be offended and insulted. I mean, I'm not just in disagreement when someone like Tariq Ramadan, accepted now at the high tables of Oxford University as a spokesman, says the most he'll demand when it comes to the stoning of women is a moratorium on it. I find that profoundly much more than annoying.
Right, yeah.
Insulting, not only insulting, but actually threatening.
But you're not offended. This is, you don't take any, I don't see you taking things personally. You're alarmed by the liabilities of certain ways of thinking, as in Ramadan's case.
But he would say, or people like him would say, that if I doubt the historicity of the Prophet Muhammad, I've injured them in their deepest feelings.
Right.
Well, I am, in fact, I think all people ought to be offended, at least in their deepest integrity, by, say, the religious proposition that without a supernatural celestial dictatorship we wouldn't know right from wrong. That we only live by.
But are you really offended by that? Doesn't it just seem wrong?
No, I say only, Sam, that if the offensiveness charge is to be allowed in general and arbitrated by the media, then I think we're entitled to claim that much without being self-pitying or representing ourselves as an oppressed minority, which I think is an opposite danger, I would admit. I'd like to add also that that I agree with Daniel that there's no way in which the charge against us can be completely avoided, because what we say does offend the very core of any serious religious person, at any rate. If we deny the divinity of Jesus, for example, that many people will be terrifically shocked and possibly hurt. It's just too bad.
I'm fascinated by the contrast between the amount of offence that's taken by religion and the amount of offence that people take against really anything else, like your artistic taste, your taste in music, your taste in art, your politics. You can be not exactly as rude as you like, but you can be far, far more rude about such things. And I'd quite like to try to quantify that, to actually do research about it, actually test people with statements about their favourite football team or their favourite piece of music or something, and see how far you can go before they take offence, compared to, is there anything else, apart from, say, how ugly your face is, that gives such...
Or your husband's or wife's or girlfriend's face.
Yes.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I regularly debate with the terrible man called John Donoghue of the Catholic Defence League, and he actually is righteously upset by certain trends in modern art, which tend to draw attention to themselves by blasphemy. For example, Serrano's Piss Christ, or the elephant down on the Virgin, and so. And indeed, I think it's quite important that we share with Sophocles and other pre-monotheists a revulsion to desecration or to profanity. That we don't want to see churches desecrated or
no, indeed not.
religious icons trashed and so forth. That we share an admiration for at least some of the aesthetic achievements of religion.
Right. I think this whole notion of I think our criticism is actually more barbed than that, in the sense that we are offending people, but we're also telling them that they're wrong to be offended. I mean, physicists aren't offended when their view of physics is disproved or challenged. I mean, this is just not the way rational minds operate when they're really trying to get at what's true in the world. And religions purport to be representing reality, and yet there's this peevish and tribal and ultimately dangerous reflexive response to having these ideas challenged. I think we're pointing to the total liability of that.
Well, and two, there's no polite way to say to somebody,
you've wasted your life.
Do you realize you've wasted your life? Do you realize that you've just devoted all your efforts and all your goods to a glorification of something which is just a myth? Or have you ever considered even if you say, have you even considered the possibility that maybe you've wasted your life on this? There's no inoffensive way of saying that, but we do have to say it because they should jolly well consider it. Same as we do about our own lives.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dan Barker's making a collection of clergymen who've lost their faith, but don't dare say so because it's their only living. It's the only thing they know what to do.
I've heard from one of them, at least.
Have you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I used to have this when I was younger in arguments with the members of the Communist Party. They sort of knew that it was all up with the Soviet Union. Many of them had suffered a lot and sacrificed a great deal and struggled manfully to keep what they thought was the great ideal alive. Their mainspring had broken, but they couldn't give it up because it would involve a similar concession.
Right.
But that certainly, if anyone said to me, how could you say that to them about the Soviet Union? Didn't you know you were going to really make them cry and hurt their feelings? I said, don't be ridiculous. Don't be absurd. But it's I find it, in many cases, almost an exactly analogous argument.
When people tell me I'm being rude and vicious and terribly aggressive in a way that I should, I say, if I were saying these things about the pharmaceutical industry or the oil interests, would it be rude? Would it be off limits? No.
Of course it wouldn't.
Right. Well, I want religion to be treated just the way we treat the pharmaceuticals and the oil industry. I'm not against pharmaceutical companies. I'm against some of the things they do, but I just want to put religions on the same page with them.
Including denying them tax exemption.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, or in the English case, state subsidy.
I'm curious how religion acquired this charmed status that it has compared to any of these other things. I mean, somehow we've all bought into it, whether we're religious or not. And that some historical process has led to this immunization of religion against, well, this hyper offense taking that religion is allowed to take.
And what's particularly amusing to me, finally, at first it infuriated me, but now I'm amused, is they've managed to enlist legions of non-religious people who take offense on their behalf.
And how?
In fact,
yes.
the most vicious reviews of my book have been by people who are not themselves religious, but they're terribly afraid of hurting the feelings of the people that are religious, and they chastise me worse than anybody who's actually religious.
Exactly my experience.
And I think so. One of you pointed out how condescending that view is. That
Yes.
It's as though it's like the idea of penitentiaries. I mean, they're, other people need them. You know, that we must keep these people safely in their midst.
Yes.
Well, I think there's one answer to that question, which may illuminate a difference or at least a difference that I have with I think maybe all three of you. There's something about